Today, some of the strangest spirit tastes in the world and a distillery just off the M8 linking Glasgow and Edinburgh that you probably don't even know about. Hello, I'm John Beattie. Welcome to Cask to Glass, the whisky podcast where I explore the heritage and flavour of Scotland's national drink and the world's favourite spirit. In this episode, I talk to Stephen Woodcock, head of Whisky Creation and Stocks at Glen Turner. Stephen, thank you very much indeed for talking to me.
Not at all, John. The pleasure is all mine.
Before we get cracking, how do you take your whisky?
Well, it's an interesting one. Having listened to most of your programmes, I don't hear many people ever talking about glassware. So it's a bit of a... I spend all day with my nose in glasses most of the time, and it's typically wee Capitas and Glencairns and that type of stuff. So when I'm enjoying something at home, I like a bit of chunky glassware. I've got this fascination for a big chunky glass. So that and a bit of ice for me. If I know the dram and I'm familiar with the dram, a bit of ice. If I'm unfamiliar with the dram, I will take it neat. Always take it neat. Just have it as nature intended. And if it's not working for me, so it's maybe a wee bit strong, or it's maybe a wee bit spicy or something, a wee bit of water in it. But a wise person once told me you can always put water in, you can't take it back out. So start neat.
and if you and me had a dram tonight, what would it be? What would you choose? What's your favourite?
Well, should I stay on? Because obviously I've got to have the name out there. But if I was to stay on piste, I'm a real fan of a Glen Moray 18. Fully matured, first fill bourbon, nice vanilla notes, caramel notes, really easy drinking because you've got the benefit of 18 years in wood. If I go off piste and travel back to Rolls past, then a Bunnahabhain 18 is just 18 years first fill Oloroso sherry, absolutely beautiful.
And describe that. Why do you love it? I mean, I always think once you think of whiskey, you partly your brain goes to where the thing's from.
I guess so, and I suppose having experienced both places, in a previous life, I've been very lucky enough to be master distiller at Bunnahabhain, so I suppose there is that real sense of place, I guess. But maybe sitting there having that dram, it takes you there. I mean, it's the same. Glen Moray's a very special place to me as well. It's right in the heart of the county town of malt whisky. Of malt whisky country, so I guess there is that piece where it just takes you to where the dram was distilled. It's always great to have arguments, and it's great. The subjectivity of whisky is fantastic, and I always hear kind of people. And I had great arguments. I worked with a great blender at a distille called Julianne, and she was always talking about the saltiness of the sea, and you can hear that. And I was never for that. It's wood tannins. Come on, let's just get sensible here. But
burnt wood tannins.
So it's even that piece about how you enjoy the dram and the great debate that it brings. So I suppose again there's a million answers to that question.
There are. How did you get where you are? Talk me through. Tell the listeners how you got to where you are now.
I started my life in chemistry. So both my parents were in whisky, quite unbelievably. My mum worked in whisky the majority of her career, and my father had a pub in the town I was born or brought up in North Ayrshire. So I guess there was always a wee bit of chat in the background about what was happening in whisky and what was what was relevant at the time. But you never listen to your parents. Your parents are never cool, and I had this kind of passion. I wasn't good at many things at school, John, but I quite liked chemistry, and where I was brought up was full of chemical plants and these places in North, and I always remember just these magical places full of light and sounds and innocuous things coming in one end and gold coming out the other. And so fell into chemistry, fell into the chemical industry, worked there for a number of years, and I guess with a lot of kind of industry now, it went into quite serious decline. So I get the opportunity to move into whisky with Diageo at Port Dundas in Glasgow, which is no longer with us, but anyone with a memory will remember the big chimney that faced right, if you were looking up Renfield Street, it took right to the end. So and distilling is a chemical process like any other. If you've got a reasonable handle on how it works, then you'll understand that. And about a week before I started, I got a phone call from my boss, and he said, you're starting in the distillery. And I said, yeah, that's right. Looking forward to it. Great to meet you. The team are really psyched to have you, but what do you know about coopering? And I was just, not a thing. I don't know anything about, barrels are barrels to me. I said, well, we've had a wee bit of a shuffle, so you'll be starting at Dundas Hill Cooperage in a week. And I just, good God, how am I going to imagine? I turned up, even now I feel my voice going when I think about it. I've never, Coopers, good God. Some of these guys have, studied their craft for 9 years. They had 9-year apprenticeships. They're phenomenal guys. And went in there for a wee while and learnt a lot. And what I didn't know about coopering, you kind of make up, you begin to develop an understanding of how to deal with people. Because I can't tell a cooper what to do, but I can maybe try to understand how to manage a cooperage, and it eventually closed. Port Dundas closed about 2009, 2010, and I got an opportunity to move up with Diageo to Speyside, and so I moved up there 15, 16 years ago when Port Dundas closed. And the great thing about Diageo is distilleries operating in clusters, so you're never on your own. You're working in a tight team. There's another 5 guys managing another 5 distilleries. So in every distillery, there's always that piece about every distillery has its own natural character. If they were all the same, there'd be one great big whisky machine, someone's Speyside, turning out hundreds of millions of litres a year. So you learn an awful lot about how whiskey's made and how characters formed, and I really get into that. And of course, the guy, 2 or 3 miles up the road in Dufton, he's making whiskey the same way, but it's a different character. So what influences that? How did that work? And that really hooked me. So worked up in Speyside for a few years, managed a few distilleries up there, get the opportunity then to move down to Pitlochry in Blair Athol distillery. I don't know if you've ever visited it, but it's
no, I haven't.
Beautiful. I would recommend it. It's a stunning part of the world, right in the middle of Perthshire, and it's a beautiful distillery. So started to work away from home, worked there for a wee while, and then got the opportunity to move to Distill, which had the 3 distilleries. So I was based at Deanston, just outside Stirling, which is less than an hour away from where you are. So I would definitely recommend a run up. Deanston, Tobermory, and Bunnahabhain. So I started to look after, and so a fair bit of travelling. But I tell you, there are worse places to go to the office in the morning than Tobermory or Bunnahabhain. And I worked there for a number of years. Thoroughly enjoyed that. And then by chance, so there's a kind of, although it sounds a bit coarse, I suppose, but there's a kind of saying in whisky where you'll only get a job if you walk into a dead man's shoes, a style. It's all about happen chance. So our blender left quite quickly, quite suddenly, and this role just became available to start looking after stock and inventory. And we had a young blender in there at the time, Julianne, who's now doing the role I did before I left. And just me being a bit older and a bit more experienced, my boss had said, look, can you stand in, steady the ship, help out a wee bit? So I kind of started to give her the benefit of my experience, and I started to learn things off her about how you create blends, how you manage stock. And from there, the opportunity came to move to Glen Turner, where I'm based now, where I just now exclusively look after stock and whisky creation. So there are lots of kind of happy coincidences along the way that you just fall into, and I think if you don't take advantage of them when you work in whisky, I've worked in whisky a long time, and you think on it on a very base level. It's 3 things: it's water, it's yeast, and it's barley sugar, malty barley. So on a very base level, it's water, it's cereal, and it's a fungus. And you only do 3 or 4 things to it, and it turns into this much. It's a lot like the chemical industry. These really kind of mundane raw materials at one side, you get magic out the other. And I think that if you look at it like that, it can get boring quite quickly. We give tours to some people, and here's how whiskey's made, and we mash it and we ferment it and we distill it. I'm like, right, well, what do you do on a Tuesday?
Or what else? Yeah.
The same again. What about the following week? Well, I think when you get these opportunities and kind of make these sacrifices, and you can underpin it with, because I worked away a lot, and you underpin it with a bit of academic work, it suddenly opens up a whole world of possibility that just fantastic. So
you are right about, if you're in the whiskey industry, there can't be many jobs where you can be in Speyside or Tobermory or Mull or or Isla, or just beautiful locations, aren't they? Everything. It's lovely about it.
And the best of it is, I suppose there's forestry or there's fish farming, but they don't quite hold the same grip as being able to sit at the end of Bunnahabban Pier, at the end of a day, maybe just having a cheeky nip. So, but you're absolutely right. I've been very, very lucky in terms of where I've been able to work and the people I've been able to work with, of course.
So tell me about the whiskies you've got, and what are they like? Just describe them, and where do they go in the world? Who buys them?
It's a really good question because I work for the Glen Turner company, which probably not many people have heard of, but our parent company is called the Martiniquez Bardonnay, so it's French. So privately owned by one man, Jean-Pierre Caillard. His father started the company back in 1923 in Paris. And it has grown. It's mad. I mean, I wrote down some stats because my memory is absolutely crap. But I mean, for a company no one's heard of, we're in the top 5 whiskey producers globally. Number 1 spirit producer in France. What have I got? We've got 50 subsidiaries and production sites, 20 distilleries. We operate in 180 countries. Sorry. Mm-hmm. And we're the number 7 spirits group globally. So it's quite a big organisation. We've got Starlaw Distillery, where I'm based. It's in Bathgate. It's a huge site. No one's ever heard of it,
hand on it, I didn't know there was a distillery in Bathgate. If anybody's listening from America, you drive from Glasgow to Edinburgh, it sounds as if it's 5 minutes, but it can take you an hour on the thing called the M8. And just before you get to Edinburgh, on the left is a town called Bathgate. And you've got a big distillery there.
Massive distillery there, and it's just expanding further. So we're going up to 50 million litres of grain spirit a year there. But if you go to the, if you're driving past Bathgate, the Bathgate pyramids.
Yes.
Same as Bathgate, but we're right at the other side of the M8. So you just don't see us for the trees. But there's up to 40. I've now got this dog peering over the top of my laptop.
Fine, we can bring the dog in.
We've got 40 warehouses there. We've got a 50 million litre distillery there. We've got a bottling plant there. Come on, Roy. And so it's about 800,000 casks there as well. And by the time the development of the site is finished, over the next 10 years, the aspiration, this dog is going to the vets, but the aspiration is we'll have 1.5 million cask carrying capacity there. So it's a big old site.
Are you one of the biggest distillers in Scotland?
No, because we're going up to about 50 million. You've got Diageo, in terms of grain distilling capacity, have Cameron Bridge in Fife. I think it's about 100 million litres, and William Grant's have Girvan distillery down in Ayrshire, right. And I might be wrong. I think it's about 150 million. So we're not the smallest, but we're definitely not the biggest.
Where do you get all the grain from? Because I was one of our podcasts. If you maybe didn't hear, but a lot of our grain used to come from Ukraine, didn't it?
That's right, it does, and some of it still does. But you can look as far afield as Canada. Canada, a big grain producer. Central Europe, the States. And malt as well, barley. We bring barley in from Finland, of all places, amongst other, as well as Scotland and other parts of the UK. But I know I'm deviating from your original question, which is
fine. I like that.
So we've got Glen Moray in the north as well. So that is our single malt. And the brands we produce from that then. So we've obviously got Glen Moray single malt We've got a dog. We've got Label 5 in Sir Edward's, which I don't think an awful lot of people will have heard of, but are massive in Europe. And the brand I love, Cutty Sark, which we bought from Edrington back in 2017-18. It's huge in kind of southern Europe, Spain, Portugal, Greece, out in Japan. We're trying to get it. It was the first million case brand in the States in the 60s, and we're trying to get that back. So and I'm really, it's kind of weird, but I've got a real affinity for Cutty Sark because when it belonged to Highland Distillers, so did Bunnahabhain, and Bunnahabhain was extended and taken from peated to unpeated in the 1960s for the Cutty Sark blend. So there's a bit of a link there for me, obviously, having been lucky enough to work at Bunnahabhain as well. So, I mean, the instantly recognisable ones, I think, for consumers in the UK would certainly be Glen Moray and Cutty Sark. It's albeit it doesn't have a high profile in the UK. It's something we'd like to do something about, but it's kind of funny when you have these workwear jerseys and you've got Cutty Sark in your shoulder, people instantly recognise the brand, so it's immediately, can you still get that? My father drank that, and well, you still do, but sadly it fell away in the UK.
Why is that? I mean, why would a whiskey do well abroad and fall away here?
I think it's just changing tastes, John. So I think
single malts now. Is that what's happening?
there was a move towards single malts, and blends just really seemed to fall away. And I think it's just really trying to get a bit of traction back to blends, especially in the UK as well. It's. I mean, any big whiskey company is going to be the same. I would guess 90 to 95% of your business is going to be blended whiskey, without a shadow of a doubt. The malts are much more exclusive and much more expensive, but blends are what typically keep the lights on. So, but it's something. I mean, a Cutty Sark with as a long drink, a bit of ginger ale and a twist of lime. Beautiful, but a lovely drink. So
there's a lot now, isn't there, about a bit of a slump in whiskey, and we had the Scotch Whisky Association on. They were asking for several breaks, effectively, from the UK government. One would be less tax, because they've got a calculation that the more tax you put on it, the less tax you take in. And then we've got the American market too, with the potential for tariffs. How do you find the worldwide whiskey market? What's happening when it comes to your products, do you think?
I think, globally, we're kind of seeing something quite similar. Things are undoubtedly slowing down a bit, but they've probably slowed down to a steady state. And I don't know whether the kind of post-COVID years just saw Europe open back up, holiday destinations open back up, sales just went through the roof, and whether we're trying to find some form of normality again, I'm not really sure. But those of us who have gone round this many times have seen that whiskey's incredibly cyclical. It used to be. I don't recall seeing such a period of sustained growth, but it used to be this sawtooth effect: growth, fall off the edge, growth, fall off the edge. And so, whilst there's whilst there's certainly a slowdown and a bit of concern, to my mind it'll undoubtedly come back. And our owner, Mr. Kayar, I mean, he's in his 80s. He's seen it. And, whilst a lot of companies are dialing back, we're dialing back a bit, but we're still laying down stock for the future, because his long-term view is it's going to come back. And so people who aren't making it now are we'll have the stock laid down when people come looking for it in the future, is his view. And I kind of share that. So keeps us busy. We've dialed back grain production slightly, but we're still building a massive extension to our distillery. We're still building warehouses, another set of warehouses that will be opened in the next few months, and then we will start again on the next bank. So I think, it's always a wee bit of a short-term view to be too worried about whiskey. I always see it coming back.
Tell me about what you do at Glen Turner in terms of, you said you look after the whiskey products. Effectively, do you invent a product? How does that work? You've got a thing called whiskey. You brand it, you write the story, you do the artwork, you blend it, or you sell it. How do you make up a whiskey persona?
So,
if you know what I mean.
I mean, it's very much a joint effort. I don't look after everything. I look after obviously the liquid side of things, and then we have marketeers who will look after the design. They will have an idea of the market they see something appealing to. They will give me a scope, and I will go away and work to that scope in terms of the profile they want. But in terms of, it's kind of interesting because I've got this, this title, Head of Whisky Creation and Stocks. It sounds magic.
Exactly.
But if you look at it from a creative angle, you think, God, this guy must just do nothing but sit in a lab all day with, test tubes and mixing stuff up. And it's not, it's about looking after the day and daily. It's about the bread and butter. It's about, making sure that we have, that we have the core range that we currently service available to the market when they need it. So I have three teams that report into me. There's a technical team who operate the lab at Glen Turner in Bathgate, and they look after the spirit quality. So that's from new make through to mature, from mature through to the finished case good. So that's very important. I need to know all that information. And then I have a wifey who works for, she lives in Elgin. And she works for me at Glen Moray, and she looks after the stock, and she manages our stock system to make sure that we have the stock we need, where we need it, when we need it. And she's an absolute tour de force. She keeps me, she's always a step ahead, and I always tell her name's Susan, and always tell this story that when Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, he had a missed call for Susan. It's like, or when Mark Zuckerberg invented Facebook, he had a friend request for Susan. She's just always
contacts.
And then finally, the chap I share an office with, Craig. So he looks after the wood. So we buy an awful lot of wood every year from the States or from across Europe as well, whether it's sherry or port or bourbon or wines. And they are the three key fundamentals for me, and I just kind of float above that, and I look to try and interpret a forecast that comes from our group company, and so that's 30 years out, so it's not quite like looking at the weather. Our oldest liquids, we sell it at 30 years of age, so I need to understand what I need to be laying down and what wood that we think we're going to need 30 years from now, and everything in between.
30 years from now.
Yeah, 30. So
you're planning 30 years ahead in terms of whisky production.
30 years ahead.
You're ordering wood for 30 years from now.
Yeah. And we're laying down spirit, so we're distilling spirit today that we're anticipating and selling 30 years from now. And again, every age statement in between. So I kind of take all the good work they do and then try and fit that into this forecast in terms of having the right volume of liquid in the right wood at the right time. So when the market is going to need it, and that's really the bit I do. There is the nice whisky creation bolt-on. I'm given a nice budget. So one thing about Glen Moray, and I don't know how much you know about the brand, but it's a very interesting wee brand, and we kind of brand ourselves as cask explorers. We're not feared to give something a go. So, I got a wee budget to go away and look for exotic casks and go.
What have you used? What have you had?
So, well, the most unusual we've been in trouble with SWA a couple of times because it doesn't do well. You'll know the game, John. You want to play slightly offside, So
you want to have an advantage.
Yes.
So you don't try, you don't get.
So, of course, the SWA stipulate the type of casks we can use for a variety of reasons. You can't just use anything and call it whisky. So, we've tried, in previous lives, we've done a champagne cask finish. Somebody gave us into trouble because you don't actually get a champagne cask. So you only get white wine. It's not champagne. You put it in the bottle and add more yeast. So, into trouble for that. We've had cider casks. Cider isn't cider isn't traditionally aged in oak barrels. So again, we get into trouble with SWA for that, but we don't do it again. And then this year we launched as our distillery exclusive maple syrup finished whisky, which went down really well. But this time, it wasn't whisky, and if you can edit that out, it's a spirit drink. So we weren't allowed it, and it doesn't say whisky in the bottle, so I do need to be clear about that. But we took some lovely Glen Moray. We took some unpeated and we took some peated, and we finished them for 2 years in maple syrup casks that we brought over from from Canada, and the whiskey was just, the spirit was absolutely.
What did that taste like?
I'll tell you what, the peated one, the peated one was like, so my kind of goal was a wee bit like almost it should be a what's the word I'm looking for? It should be an experience. And what I was aiming for, it started life in bourbon, so you got a lovely kind of sweet, cereally, vanilla notion to it. But the peat brings in its own angle, so you almost get a kind of smoky bacon note to that. So when you're finishing that in maple syrup, the whole piece was to have an American breakfast in a dram glass. You had that smoky bacon, you had the sweetness of the pancakes, you had the maple syrup. It's beautiful. It really is.
An American breakfast in a whiskey.
Well, there you are.
Well, no, it's not a whiskey. In a spirit drink.
In a spirit drink. You keep me right.
An American breakfast in a spirit drink.
That was the kind of aspiration. And we've got things like orange wine. That's another thing. So I'm looking at, like, kind of, do you want an old-fashioned, straight out the cask sort of style? So there's an orange, a Vino di Naranja, I think it's called, and we bought casks in from Italy. And it's an orange wine, so during the fermentation stage they have orange peel and stuff in it, and again a beautiful kind of Jaffa cakey note to the spirit. Just try something a wee bit different.
It's just as you say, it's just being a bit different, isn't it? And somebody goes, I'll try that because it's different.
And I'm very lucky because I've got the freedom to do that. You don't boot the backside out your budget, but I'm allowed to spend a wee bit of money in some exotic casks so that we can do a distillery exclusive, or we do a range of Glen Morays called Warehouse One. So Warehouse One's kind of very traditional dunnage warehouse at Glen Moray, where we keep all the nice barrels and anything we do in there, we tend to do maybe a limited release of 2,000 or 3,000 bottles. So this year we did tequila, a peated and unpeated tequila. We've got mezcal in the pipeline, so we just try and do, again, something that's that wee bit of a break from tradition. And
who buys that? I mean, is that a UK market?
Yeah. Well, Warehouse One used to be the UK market. It's now gone global. But something like the spirit drink, the maple syrup, we just sold through the distillery.
So people buy it at the distillery or mail order, or they?
Yeah, well, you can go on the website and buy these.
Buy it.
Glen Moray has a website as well. Yes.
Wow.
But it's always nice to go to the distillery and experience these things, because again, it's up in the heart of Speyside. It's a beautiful place to visit. There's a lovely wee cafe on site, so it's a great place to be. And again,
tell me about you. You started off talking about cooperage and barrels, and you've kind of come back to it, and that does seem to be, without being daft, as an outsider coming into all this, it does seem to be the key. Is the wood, isn't it? The wood in the barrel. That's one of the key. You can make a brilliant spirit, but it's what you then do with your enterprising thinking when it comes to wood in the barrel.
I guess. Well, yeah. I mean, it's you need. I mean, one thing we pride ourselves on as well is a very, very strict wood policy. So we know at each stage of the process how many fills we've had in a cask, what spirit's been in that cask, where it's being situated, and because we want, or where it's being warehoused, we want to manage our spirit as well as we possibly can, and we probably use casks far less time than we probably could. But yeah, if we use, we know Glen Moray works incredibly well in first fill bourbon. That's nice. So we've got the 12-year-old and we've got the 18-year-old, but what else can we do with it? And anything that seems to have been derived from a grape works. We've got cognac expressions, we've got Cabernet Sauvignon expressions, Chardonnay is absolutely beautiful, sherries, ports. So, I buy all these casks in and we do finishes or full maturations, and just seems to work, incredibly well. But once you start looking at, right, okay, we know Chardonnay works and we know Cab Sauv works, right, let's try a Shiraz, or let's go and look for something even more exotic, so it's in half the casks I bought, I can't remember their name, I just remember you get the liquid at the end, or you check the inventory and you go back in and check these things, but you're right, it's just about trying to...
You strike me as somebody who loves their job, actually. I remember interviewing somebody the other day, and part of having a good product is you've got to enjoy your job, haven't you?
You've got to.
You love your job.
I love it. I mean, and again, it's one of these things, it's not just about working in whiskey, it's Scotch whiskey. And for me, That
Scottish product.
Scotland's gift to the world, and it's up there for me with Belgian chocolate or Italian stouts. It's synonymous with Scotland. Yeah. And I remember a managing director asking me a day, because I was dragged into one of these thinking groups with the big company I was working at the time, and it was about how we motivate and how we get the best out of people and where does discretionary effort come from. And he asked me, what gets you out of your bed in the morning? And at that time I happened to know there were 125 working distilleries in Scotland. I happened to know this number, and I was able to say to him straight away, I'm only one of 125 people in the planet that can say I do what I do, and it was that. I just love it. Like I say, it's got a lot to offer. The people, the people you meet, and there's the stories you can tell, and people want to come along and talk about whiskey, and I love it when people say they love the products we make, but equally I love the discussions when people say, I don't quite like that, it didn't work for me. Well, what didn't work? Let's help understand, and let's go and try and find something else you might like. It's an engaging, and I think again, it can become very boring and very mundane if you let it. But equally, if you want to just have a good run at it and learn from it, then it'll do nothing but look after you. It's been nothing but good to me.
What do you think the future of whiskey is? I know it's one of these really open-ended questions, but you think of things that have been trendy and not trendy anymore. But whiskey's got this place in the world, this market, this Scotch whiskey brand that's respected. People respect it. And you would want to think, well, we can make it bigger by doing this. What do you think the future is?
I think it's a great question. It's one of these, I suppose. I think, would it be daft to say why would we do anything different, particularly? I think we need to keep our feet in the ground. Certainly, I think there's been a great big explosion in terms of how much whiskey we're producing, how many distilleries there are out there, and it only, I suppose, takes something like the crisis in Ukraine to suddenly realise what an impact that can have on energy costs and cereal costs, and and a lot of the big guys can ride that out, and we'll be able to ride it out. But I think we need to keep very, very grounded and suddenly realise that there's never a quick buck to be made in whiskey. So it's a very much a long-term game, and my fear is, kind of a lot of people building them now. I certainly hope they don't run into difficulty, but it's a challenge certainly. But I guess there's the counter argument is, why wouldn't you evolve? Why wouldn't we try and bring something new to the market?
I'm just wondering, you said you had a French owner, which I did know. When you said he was 80.
He's well into his Michikai.
Into his 80s. So when this Frenchman, when he comes and he sees whiskey and he's part of the whiskey world, what does he think?
He sees a bright future in it. As I said earlier, he's not interested in taking a backward step. He is always wanting to invest. Again, we're expanding Starlaw. We've expanded Glen Moray to as big a footprint as the site can have. So it's now up to, I think it's gone from about the mid, kind of 2015 to now, it's gone from 2 million to 9 million litres, and we're not taking the foot off the gas for there. And I think, given he has that confidence, we're privately owned, we don't have any shareholders, the money he puts in is his, and he sees a bright future for it, because we're, like I say, we're still expanding, and I think as long as we keep that story alive, I think as long as we don't lose the history of, as long as it doesn't become quite inert and just another, whiskey's about people, it's about stories, it's about sitting down, having a dram. That's what makes it for me, and I'm old enough to be able to, some stories that I probably couldn't tell over this podcast, but there's, some of the stories and some of the people have been great over the years, and you never forget that.
And before you go, and I feel you're one of these guys I could talk to for hours, but before you go, is there a market out there that we've not serviced, that whiskey's not really, in terms of global markets, the really growing populations of the Middle East, China, I think India's overtaken China as the most populous country in the world. The Russian market, obviously, because of what's happened with them invading Ukraine, that's gone. What's the market? What do you think's the big untapped market?
I suppose the obvious one, there's all, and I'm not really into the kind of politics of stuff, but there's a kind of free trade agreement with India, which is obviously going to now. I don't get an impression that that we're necessarily after that business, but I think if it comes off, I think a lot of the really big guys will, and to my mind, we will leave there'll be a vacuum left somewhere. If everyone rushes into India, there's going to be a vacuum somewhere that's going to need serviced, and you know, I think we're the company to do that, if I'm honest. So I don't necessarily think for us it's. I could be wrong. I don't own the business, obviously. But my feeling would be that if the really big guys want to rush in and really hit these untried and untested markets hard, we'd be quite happy to go in and look at the existing markets there and fill that vacuum.
Do you know, that's bizarre, because I met Duncan Bannatyne once, the businessman, and I read his book. And one of the really interesting lines in his book was, don't invent anything, just get your share of the market.
Yeah.
His whole thing was, don't invent, but if you know people have gyms, you start doing gyms. So you're saying, well, we can go for all these fancy markets, but just service the market you've got and get your share and be successful.
I don't think there's a truer word spoken. I think it's, I mean, you know, there is undoubtedly massive markets to go out there and chase, but I think to that point, it is really just a case of, know what you do it well. You know, and if we can fill that vacuum of those markets, then that's exactly what we'll do.
Good to talk to you. How's the dog?
The dog's fine. At least he stopped hanging over the top of the laptop, so that's a bit of a boost. He would usually be in. He's managed to. It turns out dog inoculations aren't 100% proof. So he managed to catch some kennel cough, so he's confined to barracks. So a couple of days this, he can't go to his usual doggy daycare, so he hangs about and annoys me.
Well done. It was good. Stephen, thank you.
John, my pleasure, sir.
We're never going home. We're never going home. Can we stay with you in Scotland for the rest of